All right, Journey's End. Of all of the episodes that I've had to do, this is one of the ones that I personally dislike the most in terms of it having a meaningful story. And I'm definitely going to have to get into that a lot because of the fact that, explaining why I hate it. Yeah. Well, let's start with the things that I like about this first. Okay, so the first thing is you have a colony dispute about like who owns the planet, who controls the territory, and all of that stuff. It gives you a you know meaningful dispute to resolve that isn't direct conflict, at least not at the start, and that the goal is to avoid direct conflict, which honestly, given the way a lot of these productions end up going, is a refreshing change of pace, considering how often these things more or less devolve to shoot on sight. Granted, the devolving to shoot on sight is always considered a bad thing, but it's way too common. Anyways, so with that in mind, um, the Cardassian Neutral Zone is a good place to put one. See, because of the fact that, canonically, there have been a long history of border conflicts between the Federation and the Cardassian Union. And the United Federation of Planets apparently spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to properly allocate a border because of the fact that the United Federation of Planets had apparently been expanding willy nilly into that region of space and, just colonizing planets here, there, and everywhere. And then after they realized that the Cardassian Union was also expanding into that region of space, they had to stop and think about it because of the fact that they were having, conflicts over who actually controlled the territory. So, you know what? That location having border conflicts that haven't been fully resolved, despite the fact that the Federation, the Cardassian Union are nominally at peace at the moment comes up. Great stuff. Honestly, a great thing. And another thing that I like about it is Gul Evek. See, Gul Evek is actually one of those characters who ends up as a recurring role, but not one that recurs often. So a lot of people probably forgot about him. But I like him because he's a sensible, um, relatable Cardassian who, wants to do his job and knows that other people don't like the fact that he's doing his job, but, he's not here to be a jerk about it. However, he does have a job to do. And that job is telling Captain Picard what the terms are, at least in this episode. So, in that regard, a notable recurring antagonist character, hey, any antagonistic character that didn't get killed off the first time you used them is fair game for being reused if it, makes sense. And this is a guy who didn't get reused often, but he did get used well when he did get used. Although in some, if I remember right from DS9, some of his appearances are basically we want to have more than just Gul Dukat as a Cardassian Gull. So we have other people who are also notable characters. Anyway, though, that's not the same. So Okay, that's stuff that's relatively good with this. What's the bad stuff? Well, one of the things is that this is ultimately a Wesley Crusher is a weirdo things because this is the episode where he decides that he wants to become a demigod and go study with the traveler on how to be a demigod. Not really a fan of the whole Wesley Crusher is special thing. So, that is not exactly something I personally would want to put into a TTRPG campaign. Don't like that idea at all. So having Wesley Crusher be a superhero at the end of the episode and then leave with the traveler is just, well, what? Why? Although I have to say, on the one hand, it's a way of getting him out of the series. But on the other hand, this is season 7 of TNG. It's the final season of TNG. And Wesley Crusher does come back later, anyways. So they didn't really get rid of him. Anyway, though. Okay, let's move on to the other part of this. Because, I mentioned that Dorvan is a territorial and a group of people who had expanded to it. And, well, see, the thing is, that's kind of weird that TNG does, and to a lesser extent, TOS. Okay. They are cognizant of the fact that there are, in fact, real world ethnic groups and so on and so forth among humans on Earth, and sometimes decide they want to use those in stories. In this case, it was a Native American tribe that decided to migrate to a foreign planet because they felt that Earth was now too crowded and they didn't want to live on Earth anymore. So they found a planet in deep space what they could call home. Which, um, when you explain it that way, it doesn't sound terrible. However, there's the fact that they apparently spent like almost 200 years getting there, and they had just barely started building a colony at the time that Picard shows up to tell them to leave. Which is one of those things I personally found to be a very strange plot point because of the fact that it suggests that they colonized this planet while the Federation was in conflict with the Cardassians. Because of the fact that the Cardassian conflicts, um, hmm, yeah, it's one of those things they didn't really give us proper dates for, but like, several years prior to TNG was when they signed the treaty establishing the Cardassian Neutral Zone. And um, while we don't know exactly when that was, the fact that this establishes that these guys colonized this planet approximately 20 years ago means that either they did that very shortly before the Federation was having the border dispute fought with weapons with the Cardassians. Um, or, right before fighting started. Either during the fighting or right before fighting started. It would make more sense for them to, have a what's the best way to put this? Longer association with the planet? I mean, the episode as aired basically says that they it's not that they just got there, but they've only been there a relatively short period of time. Just long enough to, finish setting up a colony. Um, Yeah, the explanation for why they decided that they wanted to stay there, even if it meant becoming Cardassian citizens. Now, to be fair, I am not saying that I think that particular plot point was bad. The whole is like, oh, we don't we're here and we don't want to leave, so we're just going to like, oh, the Cardassians are in control of the planet. Fine, the Cardassians can be in control of the planet as long as we live here. That is something that actually was one of the better parts of the episode is that Picard doesn't try to tell Gul Evek that he can't have the Cardassian colonists set up the Cardassian colony on the planet. That would have been uh, horrifically stupid. So, that's a good point here. And to balance out the fact that I think that their logic behind having the colony set up for that reason was strenuous at best. Not one of the things that was a particularly good idea. And also, it's like the episode kind of sort of hints that the reason why they decided that they wanted to go to this planet in the first place was to preserve their cultural identity because they felt that if they stayed on Earth, or wherever it was that they left from, that they would end up, losing their cultural identity, which on the one hand, it's kind of understandable, but on the other hand, it says bad things about a lot of things, not just the Federation, that it took them almost 200 years to find a place that they actually felt at home. Yeah. Very strange to say the least. It is interesting to note that people rummaging around in various Akudagrams found what they think is the name of the ship that these guys used, even though the ship was not mentioned by name. And this is actually a completely different episode. Okay, notably, the episode that this ship name was seen in had a vaguely similar plot device, which was that the various groups of humans that were expanding to the galaxy had decided they wanted to be separate groups so to maintain a sense of cultural identity. Well, up the long ladder was about a group of people who were culturally Irish or something like that and wanted to stay Irish more or less. Yeah, that didn't go as well as they were hoping it would, but hey, whatever. They did eventually kind of sort of fix it. Anyway, though, that kind of sort of gets with the other thing though is that this episode, the way they set things up, they have this guy here talk to Picard about things that realistically, if someone was to say this to me in real life, I would assume he was lying because of the fact that it's information that he realistically shouldn't have and that it's information that I can't verify to be true. This being the fact that he sits down and talks with Captain Jean-Luc Picard about one of Captain Picard's ancestors and how he feels like Captain Picard needs to atone for the misdeeds of his ancestor. Which, at the end of the episode is like, yes, yes, I do feel that you have indeed atoned for the misdeeds of your ancestor. Which you're supposed to see it as something good and inspiring and uh, like Captain Picard did the right thing or something. It's just that I have no reason to believe Anthwara was actually telling the truth. it comes across more as a manipulative schemer than someone who is actually being honest and truthful, which sours the entire aspect of the story. It's like Anthwara is the kind of person who comes across more often as a um manipulator, but also it's like he's a guy who is in charge for a specific reason and knows that in order to stay in charge, he needs to do certain things, and thus his being a manipulator is in part rooted in trying to stay in power as the chief because of the fact that being the chief isn't it's not a divine right. No, no, no. Being the chief is because the other people feel like you being chief is for the best. Anyways, um yeah, because like Anthwara knew that telling the people to leave would be unpopular, so he didn't want to do that. And that is kind of it's more than just a big deal. It's one of those things where it's like when you look at the story from the perspective of questioning Anthwara's motives, um, the entire reason why they're so close to Cardassian space makes you wonder what the heck is going on. Like, why did they choose this planet when there are several other planets that they could easily relocate to that would have been not as close to Cardassian space? We don't have answers to that, and the fact that we don't have answers is part of what makes it so head scratching. Anyway, though, that's one of those things where it's a kind of character that if you were to write this into a TTRPG, your players may not, take the character the way you intended for the character to be taken. And as a result, the plot might go off on a tangent while people who are, supposed to be resolving the conflict starts trying to figure out who the good guys actually are. Oh, and then there's the other part of this. The other part is simply that this episode has a lot of backstory stuff in it. All of that stuff about Javier Maribona Picard is completely historically questionable because, like I mentioned before, is that from an in-universe perspective, Jean-Luc Picard has no reason to believe any of this stuff is actually true. Because, the Enterprise's computer doesn't have information that wasn't recorded in the historical database. They don't have a historical database that can corroborate that any of this stuff actually happened. And like I said about Anthwara, is that when you have that in the story, the players aren't necessarily going to like it. And that kind of thing just well, like I said, it's like it kind of sours the mood when you do that and it doesn't, work. So, like a lot of players, the situation Picard is in is that, Picard would have been, in his right, just like, okay, well, I came here to offer to relocate them. They refused. I can't legally fight Gul Evek, so I'm going to leave. And while I don't like the idea of leaving a Federation colony to be something or other by the Cardassians. I don't have the ability to do anything about it with the current tools at my disposal. Which, what that really means is that, yeah, I'm going to pack it up and leave. And whatever happens to them, it's not my concern. I mean, the end result in the actual episode was not that. It was seeing to it that the colonists would, at the very least, not get eradicated by the Cardassians. Because that's actually something that Gul Evek specifically mentions in the story as being something that was one of the possible options. Is that, if the Federation didn't relocate the Federation colony, the Cardassians had the right to just kill them. Yeah, having an actual group of players in that situation, they might just decide to leave, and that, it's not worth it trying to help people who don't want to be helped, even though those people know that the Cardassians are going to kill them. Yeah. Mm, Again, I'm not saying that I think that's the right choice. I'm just saying that that's a choice that players might make, and it's kind of sort of there as a possible outcome. Yeah, because as someone once told me, is that when it comes to stuff like this, don't present a choice when you are trying to railroad the players into making a decision and trying to force them to make the right decision. Because if you are forcing them to make the right decision, asking them to choose is kind of counterintuitive. Anytime you give them a choice, they might choose the other thing that you don't want them to choose. So just keep that in mind. 'Cause like I said, Picard, as this episode was written, um, would have been in the right if he'd simply like walked off and just left the colonists to their fate. He didn't actually have a legal obligation to actually do something because of the fact that the colonists basically told him that they don't want his help. So after that point, eh. And also, it's like this isn't even the first time that Picard has been in a situation where he had to do negotiations like this, because the episode with the I forgot their name. The gooey alien people that are like non-humanoids, and not even a carbon-based race. I forgot what their name was, but yeah, it's like there was a episode where he had to negotiate with an alien race over who was controlling the colony. Well, see, in that episode, Picard actually did something different and simply talked the aliens into waiting and not, enacting their plans immediately, and so that they could relocate the Federation colony that shouldn't have been on the planet in the first place. Because, yeah, that particular episode, the Federation colony was one that had been put there without the knowledge of. Yeah, it's a weird thing because, like, it's kind of sort of like it's a colony created by humans that's not actually answering to the Federation. Uh, Much like this one, actually, because the fact that, again, it's like they're just there. They kind of like wandered off, and that while they're nominally Federation citizens, they're not really following Federation laws. But in the other episode with the I forget what their name is. Well, Sheliak. That's who it was. It was the Sheliak. Yeah, the episode with the Sheliak are told like, yes, yes, we will remove the Federation colony. You will be able to colonize this planet, but not today. And that was the end. This one, in many ways, the episode is very similar. It's a negotiation about a colony and the fact that the Cardassians want the Federation to remove it, but he manages to talk them into doing something different. Which, hey, at least they had a different resolution than they did the previous time. Anyways, though, that's enough about this one. Not one of my favorite episodes. Although it does have one of my favorite Cardassians in it, Gul Evek. Alrighty, well, see you guys later.